of sisters reunited.
When you look in the mirror in the morning, the picture that looked back at you should be familiar with other people around you, and it never was for me. And I could never really understand why my mum looked pale-skinned and I was dark-skinned, so that was always a puzzle to me. There wasn't a single person on this earth that I looked like.
Jenny Ellis was born of a wartime love affair. This is the story of a lifetime search for her true identity, and how despair has turned to unbelievable joy.
It was like living a dream. I mean, I remember when I first found out about my family, I was so frightened to go to sleep at night because I was convinced that I was going to wake up one day to find out it had all been a dream.
This is a bit of New Zealand, but it's in England, 11,000 miles away from you folks at home. That's our kite, Arobo. I suppose all Lancasters look much the same if you don't happen to fly in one.
It is 1943, and Jenny's father Bill has come from New Zealand to serve with the RAF.
I'm the navigator, and from the South Island.
He's a Maori and a wireless operator with 75 Squadron based in Cambridgeshire.
Our pilot's Eric. He's from New Zealand too.
Rare film of the squadron in action reveals little of the terrible losses among the crews.
I'll try and tell you about the crew, my crew. Glenn, the New Zealander, a Maori from the North Island. He's our WAP, short for wireless operator.
Amidst the uncertainties of war, Bill Kereama met a young Scottish WAF. Her name was Jeannie. They fell in love.
You'll never know just how much.
But Bill was already married, and at the end of the war, he returned home to his wife and baby daughter. By then, Jeannie was pregnant.
You'll never know just how much I care.
Jeannie named her daughter Jeanette. From Bill, she heard nothing.
My love for you.
Broken-hearted, she gave her daughter up for adoption.
I could hear this woman really screaming and crying, and there's something that will live with me till I go to my grave because it was really horrendous. Dad had a car and we went out to somewhere near Thetford to pick Jenny up at this home.
In the car with Peter Howell were his aunt and uncle, Dorothy and Eric Pratt. They were collecting their new daughter. Jeanette was about to become Jennifer.
We sat in the car, and the next thing I knew was they came out with carrying Jenny. The most vivid memory that I have as a child is this woman absolutely screaming, my baby, at the top of her voice. And when we sort of queried with, I asked my mother, well, why is that lady crying? Oh, that's all right, don't worry about that. She said, it's nothing. And we just drove off.
On the 28th day of November 1946, I signed over my baby Jeanette to her new parents, Mr. and Mrs. Pratt of Norwich, for good. On no account or reason can I have her back. I have regretted my act ever since. For now, I have no one to love and no one to love me. Love, Jean Stewart.
Mother and daughter would never meet again. And Jeannie Stewart would have no more children.
My parents were kindness themselves. I mean, I couldn't have wished for a more caring couple of parents to have as the people who brought me up. My mum always said to me that, she said, you're special because we chose you. She was very protective of me. She only told me little bits of information which she felt I could probably deal with at that time. I wished that I was white like other children. In fact, I went out when I was a teenager and bought a bottle of peroxide, thinking that if I coat my arms with that, my arms would go white. The only thing that happened is that burnt my skin and my skin fell off, and then it went brown again afterwards. So I realised there was not very much I could do. I was always aware that there were differences. At school there were differences, at home there were differences, in appearance. And they were terribly important to me.
It is the first time in almost 50 years that Jenny has returned to her old school.
There were difficulties at school because of my colour. Questions then start to be asked by the children. Was your mum black? Was your dad black? And questions like that, which I couldn't answer, and I found very difficult. And as the questions became more and more difficult for me to understand and answer, I became more withdrawn at school. I'd never had that experience before. Today, I guess you'd call it bullying. I was segregated after that. And the segregation happened twice because I was segregated with the headmistress to take my lessons with her, because that was a kind of protection for me. But then there was another segregation when I then had to have lessons at home after school because my schoolwork suffered so badly.
Jenny's adoptive parents died still guarding the story of their daughter's birth. She knew only that her dad's name was Bill and had come from New Zealand to serve in the RAF.
I desperately wanted to find my family, but I never believed I would ever find anybody on my dad's side. I looked in newspaper archives to see if I could find out any information, to see if I could see any names. So I searched everywhere to see if I could get any information, but nothing ever came up. Everything I tried, I came up against a dead end, and I really began to believe that I was never meant to find my family. And that was always a kind of a dark cloud hanging over my head. I even went around cemeteries to see if I could see any names. I went from one end of the country to the other, sort of searching in graveyards. I know it's an odd place, but that seemed like a good idea at the time.
Jenny's mum had in fact returned to Scotland and eventually married. On one fateful day in Dundee, mother and daughter were only a single street apart.
We went up to Dundee in 1993 because I really felt absolute desolation when I was there. I felt that we were getting nowhere at all.
But then it seems so strange that, how close we were to your mum at that stage. Who knows? We might have walked past her.
I know. Only we'd known, John.
Yeah.
If only we'd known, because we could have knocked on her door.
During their search, Jenny and husband John had uncovered her mother's birth certificate, but little else. On her own birth certificate, there was no mention of her father.
I knew a bit about my mum, but I never believed I'd ever find any part of my father's family. Never in a million years. I wonder how many other people are searching and have almost given up.
Between Jenny and her father, there is an unmistakable likeness. And back in New Zealand, Bill Kereama had 6 more children. The second born was Sandra.
Well, when we were children, Dad had lots of photos that he had taken while he was away overseas during the war. And one of the photos we came across, there was a whole drawer full of photos. One of those photos was this little girl. We never knew anything until we saw the photo. But I mean, the photo speaks for itself. Obviously that child was born to them. They were never married because Dad was already married.
Like Jenny, Sandra Brittain searched in vain to find her sister. Then the arrival last year of a stranger changed everything, and forever.
Dear Sandra, I've been thinking a lot about you in the search. I keep hoping that I can find Jeanette for you and get so excited at the thought.
Christine Scarrolls, a schoolteacher from Scotland, had stayed at the motel owned by Sandra in New Zealand. She vowed to help Sandra find her sister.
Hello, Sandra. Well, I'm now in possession of a copy of Jeanette's birth certificate. She was born in Thetford, Norfolk. Her mother's name was actually Amy Eugenia Stewart, and her address was 166
Dear Christine,
Ferry Road.
I've contacted Jean's sister this morning, and she tells me that Jeanette was renamed Jennifer. I do hope my sister is still alive. My fingers are crossed, and all I can do now is wait. Kia kaha, which means in Māori, be strong.
Dear Sandra, I've just arrived back from holiday and I'm delighted to report that Jennifer's marriage certificate was waiting for me. I'm going to try a couple of possibilities this morning, so we'll let you know of any further steps forward.
Well,
My fingers
it
are
has
crossed for you.
happened. We have found Jenny. I'm sure the family will want me to pass on their grateful thanks for the huge part that you played in finding and returning our sister to us. Love, Sandra.
Life is funny, and I'm a firm believer in fate. This is meant to happen. Thinking of you.
Dear Christine, I feel very tearful after reading your last email. I want so much to pick up the phone and call her, but I'm scared that I'll frighten her off. What do you think? I realise that this is the most difficult part and must be handled sensitively and carefully.
The search had taken 6 months. Jenny had married, divorced, and remarried. Christine began to suspect that Jenny did not know her mother and father were both dead, or perhaps even that she had been adopted.
It was, I always remember, Friday, the 20th of June, and about 5 o'clock, I plucked up enough courage to phone. And I sat actually at the computer where I'd done a lot of the work, and a lot of the emails had gone back and forth to New Zealand. And I phoned, and this lady answered the phone, and everything that I had rehearsed in my head, it just went. It just totally went. And I can always remember saying, please don't hang up. This is going to sound such a strange phone call.
I suddenly heard a Scottish voice say, hello, you're Jenny Ellis? And I said, yes. She said, well, you don't know me. But she said, I hope you don't mind me ringing, but did you know you'd got family in New Zealand? And I think my heart stopped a beat at that point. And I said, well, I've always hoped I've had a family in New Zealand, but I've never been able to find them. She said, well, you have got family in New Zealand and they've been trying to find you.
And then one of the strangest things she said to me, she said, what's the date today? I said, it's 20th of June. And she said, that would have been my mother's birthday. And I found that really just very emotional. I think we both found it quite emotional.
I remember putting the phone down and staggering to the back door and calling my husband, by which time when I was in floods of tears, I was crying buckets by this time. And he came to the back door and he said, oh, Jen, whatever's the matter? And I said, John, what is the one thing that I've always wanted all of my life, the one thing? And he said, well, to find your family. And I said, well, they found me. And I just burst into tears again. I think half an hour later, the phone rang again, and this time that was my sister Sandra who phoned me.
Oh, so nervous. I said, this is Sandra from New Zealand, Wellington, and I think you're my sister. And she said that she'd been waiting for us 40 years. So we talked for at least 20 minutes, and she was just so happy. And I said to her before I rang off, I said, I'm now going to ring all my brothers and sisters and tell them. And she said, what? She said, it's not just you. I said, no, there's 6 of us.
Oh, here they come.
Oh no. When I got off the plane in Wellington, I was quite nervous. And I had my daughter with me and my husband with me.
Oh, there they are. She's got her arms around her mother.
I didn't know what my reaction was going to be because I felt quite frightened that I was going to meet all my brothers and sisters, but excited and thrilled and couldn't wait.
I can't believe it. I know them all. Right in the middle of the sound.
At last. Can you believe it? Let me touch you. Look at you. Look at you. Come on. You got a hanky?
It was like living a dream. I mean, I remember when I first found out about my family, I was so frightened to go to sleep at night because I was convinced that I was going to wake up one day to find out it had all been a dream. You know, if I could relive one day in my life, that would be that day when I met the family.
I wanted to be with my mum when we came through together for the first time. I wanted to see her face. I wanted to see their faces and experience that. Too much. Beautiful.
It's just wonderful because now we've found a real person and we know that she is well, both spiritually, physically, emotionally. She is well, and we couldn't have asked for more. We have just been so lucky. It's just been perfect. We couldn't have got a better ending. Well, this is really just the beginning.
Sounds like a Kereama.
It is only 6 months since Christine's momentous phone call. Jenny still has much to learn.
I have photographs of me and my dad now, which, when you put them together, we're like 2 peas in a pod. And that's fantastic. My mother and father did have a relationship for quite some time, almost from the time that he arrived in England until the time he went back to New Zealand. So it wasn't a casual relationship, it wasn't a casual fling. And that also was important to me to know that. During the war, I don't think anybody led a normal life, so they had to literally live for the second. They had to live whilst they lived and breathed. They had to do whatever they had to do just to make life a bit more bearable. And my father certainly wouldn't have known whether he was going to live for the next 12 hours. Every time his plane took off, and he went on another bombing mission, he never knew if he was coming back. Wow, George, this is really amazing to see this incredible machine. However does it make you feel? That's just incredible.
Well, you can imagine my feeling. I mean, it's the first time I've seen a Lancaster since May '44. And when I think of, you know, what we achieved in these Lancasters, it brings back memories of how, you know, how terrified we were at times, you see, of taking part and night after night.
To discover more about her dad, Jenny has come to the Lincolnshire Aviation Heritage Centre. It's home to one of the world's last surviving Lancaster bombers. Her companion is George Wilkes. In 1944, he and Bill Kereama were both wireless operators with 75 Squadron.
I survived, you know. We survived our tour, and a lot of blokes didn't. And to meet the daughter of an old buddy, and I shall take great pleasure and pride in showing you his office or where we used to operate, you know, what we had to do. And mind your head, because there's not a lot of room, and it's 60 years since I got on one of these things, so mind your head.
Everything is so cramped in here.
Yeah, but just imagine, as I say, climbing in with all your gear and your bags and all this, climb over this bulkhead and we're almost there. And then this is where your dad would have spent most of his hours.
Wow.
Right?
Were you frightened when you were doing that?
Oh, of course we were frightened. I mean, we were all frightened, you know, because there'd be all this banging and crashing. You were in the dark, you'd be under tension, complete tension for 5, 6, 7 hours, and you wouldn't believe when you stepped outside the aeroplane onto that grass.
The relief.
The relief, absolutely, because all of a sudden you became boys again.
Yeah.
I mean, for the time you were flying, you were men. You were growing up fast.
George, when you were up there, did you ever think you were going to die? Did that go through your mind?
Strangely enough, it didn't, because the old adage, and it worked with the majority of our crew, I think if you talk to our crew, it's not going to happen to me.
Hello, Skip. First flares are just going down. Bomb doors open.
That makes me feel very odd in a way, because I'm trying to put myself in his position to see how he felt being in here, and trying to learn through you, George, what you felt and what you went through, to see if, you know, that was probably the feelings my dad had as well.
This is the closest, really, you can get to your dad and the way your dad lived and way he thought and behaved and that, because it was your family who you were going to survive with, and you had to be a band of brothers, really, because you're all dependent.
What I'm seeing sitting here is my dad, and through you I'm learning what my dad went through. So George, thank you.
Honoured, I'm honoured.
That's been very special, thank you. I feel the same way, George, I really do. No, don't say sorry. Don't you understand what this means to me? You know? I never believed I'd find the family. I never believed I'd find out anything about my dad. And to actually now be inside an aircraft, one that he flew in, is just a very strange feeling. It's an emotional roller coaster. So I'm not the kind of person who cry, but I've cried more in the last 18 months than I have throughout my entire life. And I've been happier than I've ever been, probably in my entire life. I can't believe how much joy a family can bring to you. My hat has to come off to Christine. Remarkable woman, because she's given me such joy and such pleasure. And the day will come when I actually meet Christine. I can't wait to meet her. I owe her everything.
I never thought I would do anything like this in my life. I had no idea when I actually started this what was going to happen. It's going to be lovely to meet Jenny at last.
Jenny has come to Scotland to meet the stranger whose kindness has completely changed her life.
Last year here.
Oh, how lovely.
It was lovely to see you too.
Oh.
I can't believe it after all this time.
Oh.
How about that?
Amazing. Oh, you look wonderful.
So do you.
Absolutely wonderful.
I didn't know if I'd know you, but I would have known you
Oh, yes.
straight away.
I knew you as soon as you stepped off that train. One over and... Oh, just...
You've come along and done this. You know, you've done it for a total stranger. And you've made such a huge impact on my life. You know, you've given me something that nobody else could give me. And it's all these years, 58 years. And you've given me that one gift that nobody else could give me. So that means more to me than anything else. So Thank you, Christine. Lots of hugs. Lots and lots of hugs.
Lots of hugs.
So, and I never thought I'd be walking along here.
I know.
This is up to my mum's house. Gosh, this is a weird feeling.
I bet it is.
And I wonder how many times my mum walked along here.
Yes.
Can you imagine?
No.
You know, I've thought of that. I've thought when I get to the house, I'm going to walk in the footsteps that my mother walked in.
That's right.
And the only thing missing is my mum,
Yes,
unfortunately.
I
just.
know. There's the house. That's it there.
Oh, Christine, what a strange feeling.
I bet.
You know, all those years I wanted to find her, and to think we came to Dundee in 1993, and we were so close to this house, but we just didn't know where she was. And now I'm standing here looking at the house, and you know, it's too late. You know, if you hadn't have done what you did, and,
still,
you know, knocked on doors and did all the things I weren't able to do, you know, I wouldn't be standing here now and know so much more than I did before. So.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you
must
for
have
that.
quite a lot of sort of emotions going on.
It is, yeah. But it's a lot of thanks to you, Christine, it really is. You know. All my life I'd wondered how my mum had felt about having me adopted. Did she think about me at all? When I had a birthday, I used to think, I wonder if my mum's thinking of me today. Does she remember this is the day I was born? When I was given a leaf out of my mum's diary, and she went through how she felt about having to have me adopted. That was probably the most moving thing I've ever read in my life. And although I found those words very emotional and very upsetting, and I wept buckets after I'd read those words, believe me, I realised that she cared. And that to me was the most important thing.
On no account or reason can I have her back. I have regretted my act ever since. For now I have no one to love and no one to love me.
For Jenny Ellis, her lifetime's journey to find her family is almost over. She has one final destination, at the graveside in Dundee of Amy Eugenia Stewart, Jeannie. Mother and daughter will be together at last.
No, things have changed so much, and I realise that I couldn't have done any of this without you, John. So I'm just so thankful that you've been, you've been so supportive, and you've been brilliant, so I'm just so
giving you
pleased.
something you never thought you'd have, which is great. It's wonderful. You know, it's, nobody can give you anything better than that. Could they?
No, they couldn't.
Lucky.
That's true.
Very, very lucky girl.
Yeah. I feel as I'm very lucky.
So, exciting times that you've had.
And I couldn't have done any other way.